Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host, and today we've got a really eye-opening conversation that we're going to have with Anthony Blattner. Now, Anthony, you are the founder of a LinkedIn ads agency, and there's a lot of ad agencies out there, right? But you're one of 10 people in North America that has been certified as a LinkedIn ads expert by LinkedIn, and there's only 50 worldwide. And your agency is growing like crazy. I saw that on the stats on LinkedIn and everything. You also kind of wrote the book. There's one of two like sanctioned, LinkedIn ad courses that you've written. So you kind of live and breathe LinkedIn. And that's what's important, because to the C-suite executives that are tuning in, we're all B2B. We're all in an ABM go-to-market motion. We all know how important LinkedIn is, but we also know it's really hard to get engagements. There's a lot of crap on LinkedIn. And how do we use it, right? How do we monetize it? And how do we use it for actually each and every stage of the ABM process? Can we actually turn our targeted ABM accounts into real pipeline? And can LinkedIn help us do that? These are questions that I know you dabble with all the time when you're new business and your clients and you talk about all the time. So that's what we want to accomplish today. We want to get a little masterclass in how to do this.
There's a lot that we could talk about there for sure.
Well, good. What I would love to do is have you be able to kind of add a little bit to that before we dig right in. And I thought it was fascinating. You're one of 10. You're also a big runner. You compete in marathons. There's a very small percentage of us that actually get to that level and compete regularly in marathons. So congratulations on that. Keep moving. As we get older and older, it becomes more important, right? So anyways, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background, and then we'll dig in.
Sure. These days I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but I've been in the marketing world for a long time now. And then maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, we decided to just focus on LinkedIn marketing. My background's enterprise technology, so I come from that space, and working with types of companies like that, LinkedIn always was the best performing channel out of all the options out there. So about 7 or 8 years ago, we decided to just focus on LinkedIn. So we've been a LinkedIn ads focused agency for a while now. And back in the day, people were like, do people use LinkedIn? Do they use it that much? And nowadays the platform has grown so much and people are used to using it that now it's widely known everyone uses LinkedIn, especially the professional community and then especially in like the tech world. So LinkedIn's grown a lot as a platform, and we've been, just focused on it for a number of years now. We've managed like over 100 million in ad spend. So have done pretty much everything on the ads platform. And then, as part of the program, I was one of 10 people who have actually been certified by LinkedIn for LinkedIn advertising. That was a great certification program that they have. And then as far as like the LinkedIn Learning course, it was very cool to be able to go out to the LinkedIn Learning production studio and film and create the whole course about, LinkedIn ads, tips and tricks. So if you're on LinkedIn Learning, you can go find that course there. And then, after spending all day on the computer and online, then I like to get out and go for a run after work, and have been a runner for the last few years here, and have just kind of gotten into, once you start running, then you see how far you can run, and then you start to do 5Ks and maybe a half marathon, and then all the way up to the marathon distance. So I've been doing a lot of running on the side too.
Yeah, sure. That's how all of us runners do it. We just always naturally progress all the way up, So I'm going to start out. There's things that you've learned working with company after company after company after company that you would recommend to all of us to kind of have our ducks in a row before we want to jump into campaigns, right? And like, what kind of performance can we get and how much is it going to cost? And like, there's foundational things that we need to get in order that will create the success, right? It much better ensure the success later on. What are some of those foundational things that you found?
Yeah. So there's a few different ones. I'd say like, as you approach LinkedIn, a few of like the most important things you want to have in place. You want to know who your target audience is and have a very clear definition of that. LinkedIn is still a good testing ground for if you want to be testing anything, but especially in advertising, the more you test in ads, you have to pay for those tests. So the more that you have nailed down ahead of time, the more money you're going to save yourself. So still definitely a good testing ground, but you want to have kind of the main pieces in place before you start your LinkedIn marketing. So knowing who your target audience is the number one thing going into it. Who do we want to be reaching? what are we offering them? And then what's the sales process that our prospects are going to go through? The more that you have that nailed down and ironed out, the better your results are going to be across the board. And if we want to start with targeting, a few different things that go into that is what are the types of companies we want to be reaching? And then who are those people at those companies that we want to reach? So I'm sure we're going to get a lot more into ABM here today, but targeting what you're offering and then what your sales process is going to be is the most important items.
So I just want to say something up front because those sound like very basic things that, like, okay, any marketing intern would be like, let's pull that together, right? Is laying around the office here. We got a definition of our ICP. We've got our targeted lists. We know what our targeted accounts are. But I've interviewed almost 300 B2B C-suite executives on this podcast. And I asked them, what are your two greatest challenges to creating long-term sustainable growth? Number one challenge, 72% of C-suite executives said a lack of internal alignment around things like definition of our ICP. That targeted list in ABM is like, these are the companies we want to get into, we want to do business with, we want to create a relationship with, right? Like that list, if you ask that list of sales versus marketing, customer success, right? So this alignment that you're talking about and getting the ducks in the row here, I just want to say that's not an easy thing to do. It sounds like an easy thing to do, but really good to have that nailed down before you start this kind of a process. So I just want to kind of do a little bit underpinning on that.
Yeah, definitely important to have everyone on the same page, or else the results you get in the end might not be what one of those teams is looking for. So definitely very important to have alignment ahead of time. That's going to save you a lot of headache later on. We like to have that list, that ABM list kind of shared across all those teams, make sure everyone's looking at the same list. This list probably lives in your CRM system somewhere, whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce or a different platform, but have that list live somewhere that's shared, accessible to everybody so that you're all looking at the same list and making sure that you're coming at that list from different sides.
Now, there's the list we want to bring to the table, but you also have recommendations on creating targeting systems, right? And using intent signals and things like that to create active lists. Like within our list, what are our greatest, opportunities? Tell us a little bit about that and what's unique about LinkedIn in order to get those kinds of targeting signals.
Yeah. So this will be very company dependent. Some companies, they have their set target account list and that doesn't change very often. Maybe once a year they update it or even less than that. So very company dependent. But if you're a tech company, your list probably is a bit more dynamic. And that's when you want to be building this targeting system to work for you. So these days, if you're a buyer, if they're making purchasing decisions a few times a year, and if like people are continuously going in and out of market, that's when these systems are the most effective. And we find that for like tech companies, but lots of different industries have this happen too. So what we think about building is that ABM list, that target account list, to have that be a dynamic list that can be updated throughout time by other systems out there. So these days, there's lots of third-party systems that are good at generating or capturing intent signals that maybe a company is showing. Is a company growing? Are they hiring for a specific role or department? Are they adopting a specific technology? Are they making searches for, certain types of technology indicating that they're in market, they're looking to purchase those things? So there's lots of different systems out there where you can generate these signals from. And depending on who your audience is, you might go find different data providers that will be providing those signals. And then you want to be pushing those signals so there's two different ways, a couple different ways you can build these systems, but sometimes you're going to have that master list live in your CRM system. And then those signals will come in and they'll go, maybe there's some management for like the workflow, but most common. So it's either going to be in your CRM or these days, a lot of people are using Clay to manage this, where using Clay is another good tool because you can have different signals pushing in there, but then you can also have some steps in your workflow for verifying that this company or this signal meets your ICP criteria. And then you can use Clay to do some additional things in there. So check for ICP. And then maybe in Clay, you're going to then have it go find relevant contacts at those companies, so that you're building and maintaining your list. So this might all happen in your CRM system, which can work. But then also if you need some more advanced functionality, maybe you're going to use Clay there in the middle and then sync that to your CRM system. So at the end of the day, you then want to push that list to LinkedIn. And then this is where LinkedIn is very powerful, is because you can do it from a dynamic way so that this is always being updated. And then you're going to be running your campaigns on LinkedIn, and then it's using these dynamic lists, which are updating, and then your targeting is naturally evolving over time. So very effective. And there's different companies that are going in market and out of market at any given time. So the more that your advertising can reach those right companies, the better results you're going to get at the end of the day.
So you said something pretty key there, like coming in and out of market, these companies. So there's been a number of different studies. Like there was one by Sixth Sense that said that when a B2B company goes into a buying motion, day one, they'll put 4 out of 5 vendors they're going to evaluate on that list day one. And then 95% of the time, they're going to buy from one of those lists. So the key is getting out and getting in front of the decision, right? So that you're known and you're trusted and you can be on that list. So in the world of intent signals and what you can do with, technologies like Clay and everything, are the intent signals, can we decipher signals that we would kind of classify as kind of pre-buying signals versus post? Can we get that sophisticated in how we're looking at this?
Yeah, it's going to depend on every industry and every audience as far as like where you're going to get those signals from. Like if you're in real estate tech, you're probably going to be getting it from like the MLS platform or like different things like that that those companies are doing. But there's lots of signals on LinkedIn that you can use. There's lots of signals from similar platforms, like you mentioned, Sixth Sense, demand based. There's like lots of those platforms that each generate their own set of signals. So go evaluate the different platforms and see which ones has the best signals for what you're looking to do. But otherwise, yes, there's lots of signals on LinkedIn in terms of who's engaging with this company or this person. And then you can use those signals to identify, hey, if they're already engaging with these different topics or engaging with these companies, these people, that's a very early sign of interest.
Thank you for eloquently restating my question there because it's on LinkedIn itself. You just answered the question. There's very important intent signals that is one of the main reasons why we want to be on LinkedIn to begin with, right? Is understanding those signals because that's one of the biggest ways that we push out content and then promote that content. Thank you for restating that in a way that makes more sense. You talk about reaching not only the organization, but you said then people within the organization. So the buying group, right? So the buying group is the hidden buyer, but all kinds of different studies have shown they exert about half the influence on making the purchase decision. And typically, how you reach them is through your thought leadership. So, how effectively, if we're trying to reach the buying group and not just our champion that we have the meetings with, how does LinkedIn help us do this?
Yeah, so LinkedIn can do this very well in that you can break down your campaigns and have different campaigns that are running. One campaign might be going after, so if we say maybe the different personas you might want to be reaching, depends on the company, but say you're looking to reach a marketing persona, and as that deal moves along, you want to reach a finance persona because they're going to have to approve the deal. Maybe you want to reach an IT persona because they need to make sure the software is going to integrate into their systems. So you can be segmenting your campaigns and having that same list, but then in one campaign, you're overlaying the marketing job titles versus the other campaign, you're overlaying the finance job titles versus another campaign, you're overlaying the IT job titles. Then inside of each of those campaigns, the relevant content and posts and ads are going to go so that you're delivering the right message, a tailored message to each of those personas.
So, what you're really talking about is it's one overarching campaign, but it's like a bunch of mini campaigns, right? We like to think of things as very simple to execute. This is not a simple strategy. That's an entire, persona-based messaging strategy for each element of the buying group, which is just growing and growing and growing. But the good news is we can actually target that way. So you can literally go to a specific company, a specific department, a specific role, and target campaigns that way. So here's an interesting question. I know there's not one necessarily answer to this, but LinkedIn has a reputation of being versus like a Facebook or something in the B2B world, like a more expensive ad platform, right? But when you talk about the lifetime value of ABM targets, right, in what you're going to get out of it and the individual campaigns that go to the buying group here, how would you kind of help us couch this as this is actually a pretty darn efficient way to go to market?
So when you compare the targeting options, a lot of platforms just don't have the professional targeting options that many companies want to be using. And LinkedIn's gonna be the best fit for the companies that do need and want to reach a very specific target persona at a very specific type of company. So if you're looking to sell to all business owners out there, maybe you're selling credit card solutions to all business owners, then maybe you do use Facebook because you don't need those options that LinkedIn has. And if you compare them side by side, yeah, LinkedIn usually is a more expensive platform, but it has these targeting options that you just can't find anywhere else. So if you're looking to target a very niche professional at a very specific type of company, that's where LinkedIn is really going to be a good bet there. And the things that you can look at if you're comparing stats is your cost per qualified lead that you're going to get on each channel. So usually at the end of the day, when you're doing that math, that's when LinkedIn is going to be competitive because you might be getting leads from Google or Meta, but they might not be the right kind of people. Lots of times when I've compared different campaigns here, your leads off Google might be people just kind of looking for research or stuff like that. Leads off Facebook can be kind of all across the place. People didn't really know what they were clicking on or what they were signing up for. So when you compare cost per qualified lead, in the end, LinkedIn's often going to be competitive then when you compare the quality of the traffic versus those other platforms.
Makes perfect sense. Can you give us an example? Don't name any names, right? But where you've been able to deliver a campaign where, like, say, the CMO or director of marketing or whoever you're dealing with is like, wow, I didn't realize we could do that, right? Like, how do you, we remember things 22 times better when it's told to us in the form of a story. Like, give us a story of how, like, targeting a buyer group or getting the return on investment at various stages in the ABM process, whatever you think is the best, but give us a story we can kind of like dig our teeth into.
Sure. So in the financial world, there's different certifications that people can get in the financial world. So there's a piece of financial software that we're promoting on LinkedIn, and it's mainly made for this specific type of financial advisor who has a specific certification. So very niche. And if you go target on Facebook, there's just no options out there for people who have like that specific certification. But on LinkedIn, people often add that skill to their profile. So it makes for a very nice way to, hey, I want to target people who have this skill that indicate they have the certification that we're looking for, that we sell them this piece of software. So that's like a very clear one when people are listing that skill in their profile. Great. That's a great option that we can use for targeting. And then if you're asking about the funnel there, so very common, the different stages of the funnel you're going to build is going to be your top, middle, and bottom of the funnel. Depending on the audience and the offer, I always say don't make the funnel longer than it needs to be. If you're promoting something that people actively want or need, then just go right to the request a demo. But for a lot of like enterprise technology, it is a lot more work to get somebody to know who you are, to get them interested and get them, ready and wanting a demo. So that's when you start to need to introduce the top and middle and bottom of the funnel and breaking those stages out. For this piece of financial technology, that one we can go largely more straight to demo because it's something that they know that they need. And there's not a lot of great solutions out there. The one that we're promoting is a more modern, friendly, easy to use, has a good reputation in the market. So people are already kind of like interested because they know they're using this old technology that they hate using, but they can jump to this new platform and have a much better experience. So for them, we go pretty direct to demo, but we do like to mix both the brand awareness and the demo campaigns at the same time. You'll get a little bit of lift when you're doing some brand awareness. And these days on LinkedIn, the most effective brand awareness types of campaigns you can be running are what we call thought leader ads, or what LinkedIn calls thought leader ads. They sound very fancy, but it's just the boosting of posts from people. So back in the day, you could only run company page ads on LinkedIn, but nowadays you can boost posts from people. And that's what those thought leader ads are. And they perform much better because people will always engage with people more than they will companies. And it helps people get to know your people at your company and create those relationships. So thought leaders are a great tactic to be using. So if you have people in your company who are posting, or if your founders, owners, or executives can be posting, that's great content to be boosting. And that's really great for the brand awareness side of things. It can also work for bottom of funnel types of posts where you might have your post that directs people to the website to go learn more, to request a demo. So they can kind of work for all stages of the funnel there. But for this specific piece of financial technology that I'm talking about, we're doing a lot of thought leader ads to get people in the industry to see examples and demos of how other people are using this. And then from there, we go send them to the demo page so they can request a demo and they can see it for themselves.
So I want to make a comment about, like you said, one of the most important, like, ad campaigns now are these boosted posts, right, from individuals, the brand awareness. So in a lot of B2B companies, brand awareness is something you almost never talk about at the board level. Like you never go into a board meeting and no board members are going to look at you and go, "Hey, how's that brand awareness campaign going?" Right? They're like, "Hey, what's happening with this quarter's quota? What's it look like for next quarter?" Right? Here's where it becomes extremely relevant and why what you just talked about there is so important is that, when I ask these 100 plus B2B C-suite executives, what are their top challenges, total challenges to creating long-term sustainable growth? Number 3 on the list was trust. And to go back to that comment we talked about earlier, like that 6 cents, stat of day one, you put 4 out of the 5 vendors on average you're going to look at onto that list. It's because they're known and they're trusted. If you're not known and trusted in the world of B2B, you're not on the day one list. You're not in the pipeline with that opportunity. So this isn't like the CMO wants to do a big brand awareness study because over time this is going to help us. Absolutely, it is. This has direct short term impact on a B2B ABM motion. And so I just wanted to accentuate that. And you can be so targeted because you know your ABM target accounts and you know the people inside of those that are the traditional buying group. So it's not like you're trying to run a campaign, big brand campaign to everybody. You're going to run Super Bowl ads. I mean, you're just you're talking about, tell me if I'm not taking what you're saying here and re-articulating it properly. You can be extremely efficient and targeted at a brand campaign, a thought leadership campaign that earns you trust to get on the vendor list day one.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And you're going to build trust the fastest when you're going person to person. And it's just like inherent that you're going to trust a person that you're seeing talking about something on LinkedIn versus a brand that you're not familiar with. You can go look at that person's profile and get to know them. Where have they worked? What do they do? Where are they from? Versus a company. You're not going to build that trust as fast. You definitely can, but just not as fast as like the thought leader ads will. And then this is also like a place where like the B2B influencer marketing can start to be effective. So not just your people, but other people who are talking about you can be great to be boosting. Sometimes this can be like customer testimonials. If customers are already posting good things about you, like good experiences on LinkedIn, that's amazing content to be boosting. And then the whole influencer marketing strategy can now start to work in B2B. A good recent example, I think Clay did a really good job of this when they were kind of launching and scaling. So I mentioned Clay earlier for like the capabilities of what that platform can do, but then also maybe, I don't know, maybe 6 months, a year ago, they did a big effort where a lot of people were just naturally posting these different workflows they were building with Clay and like, oh, cool, look what I built. And then they started to boost all these different posts from all these different people. And then suddenly, if you're on LinkedIn, you're starting to just see posts from all these people about this tool that they're using. And you're like, all right, I got to go check this out because everyone's talking about it. And that's like starting to leverage the power of social and LinkedIn and all that, where, hey, if everyone's talking about something, then I need to go check it out. And this is like something that you can start to build and do with your marketing by boosting posts from multiple different voices. And then you don't need to targeting everybody, but you can be very specific in your targeting. So you're focusing all these voices on that exact target market that you want to be reaching. That allows you to be efficient in your ad spend because advertising is just a function of, how targeted can I be versus how much wasted ad spend might have happened.
I was having a conversation the other day with, I think this gentleman was a 3-time B2B CRO, and he said the influencer in B2B is our own customers, right? If we are not using the voice of our customer in our pipeline, they're the ones that are the peer community of who we're selling to. They're the ones that the buyer wants to listen to, not us, right? So your strategy, what you just talked is turning the voice of your own customers into one of your biggest selling megaphones for you and doing it efficiently and very targeted on LinkedIn. Huge opportunity. I hope that people are taking away a whole new kind of, idea of multiple levels of strategy that you can go into, from the intent signals that we talked about early to the very targeted strategic influencer kind of campaigns that are going to get you into the pipeline. Because at the end of the day, it's all about pipeline. I know that at the end of the day, when you're going back through campaigns, your clients are looking at it and going like, how did this get more into our pipeline, right? So overall, not any, particular campaign or client or anything, but in general, when you know your new business prospects, the current customers you have, they want pipeline. right? Bottom line, that's the number one KPI. What do you say to the audience here about just since we've had a lot of conversation, obviously impacts pipeline, but if that's the number one KPI, what do you promise? Like, what do you say? This is what we can do when you're in a new business conversation saying, yeah, absolutely, we can impact pipeline.
So, a lot of it's going to start with like, what are the leads that you're generating? So let me break it down a few different categories. And first of all, it is purely like who are the people that we're going to be reaching and influencing? A lot of this depends on the company's sales cycle. Yes, we want to be driving pipeline. And then of course people are just going to be looking at are those opportunities closing into sales. For a lot of B2B companies, sales cycles are very long. So it can take 6 months, a year or longer to really see those results shake out. So in the very early days, we want to make sure we're reaching the right people. And, for a lot of these companies, they're like, hey, we want to reach VP and C suite at this type of company. And they know it's like, it's kind of hard to reach these people in general. But if we can put those exact targeting options into LinkedIn and then reach those people, like that's number one, that's a win there. We're reaching the right people who are hard to reach otherwise. Number two is then, yes, are we able to generate some sort of interest or lead from them? Whether it's, are we getting them to sign up for webinars and attend webinars? Are they downloading pieces of content? What are those early steps that can show that they're starting to raise their hand, say they're interested, say they want more information in those early days? It can also be good to see, are they following your company page? Are they following your people? So these are just some early signals where if it's hard or takes a long time to generate a lead or a sales opportunity or a close one deal, these are early signals that you want to look for. But then, yeah, towards later on in the funnel here, it is, yes, are we generating leads? Are we starting sales conversations? And then are those sales conversations turning into pipeline and then turning into close one deals? So it's the whole system there that we talk about. Some companies have a very short funnel and that moves very fast there. Other companies have a very long sales funnel and it is much more longer process where you're looking at these different touch points along the way. I'll also say these days there's better tracking and tooling around this. Back in the day, it used to be like look in your CRM and see where the sources are from these different contacts and leads. But that would always skew very heavily to search because while you could be doing tons of marketing out there, you could be having billboards, stuff like that. End of the day, people are probably going to go search and look up your company. And it's always going to look like they're coming from search, even though really they saw you other places and then decided to finally search for you. So just looking at your CRM sources are not sufficient. It's going to give you skewed data. So there's a lot better tooling these days that help show you the customer journey and all the touch points along the way. You can start to plug in the different channels you're using, whether it is LinkedIn or Google or Meta or email and your website and stuff. And it puts it all into like a journey map for you. So you can see all the touch points somebody goes through in the path of becoming an opportunity and then in the path of closing. So there's some really insightful data there. And what a lot of companies are finding are it isn't just search like they thought by looking at their CRM data. It is more of, people are finding out about us in these different places and then going to search for us. And in B2B, it can be a lot of like, oh, they heard about us at this conference or on this podcast or someplace or on LinkedIn. They heard about us on LinkedIn and then they decided to go search for us. So these other platforms are giving us the visibility we need to see what those original sources are, not just what was the last touch in the CRM.
I know this conversation could go on another couple hours, but I have one last question. And it's to the point where, we've covered so much territory here that if there was one thing that you wanted B2B C-suite executives that are going to be tuning into this conversation to take away as one main thing you want them to take away, what would that be?
I think it's pretty simple of like, just get started with LinkedIn. A lot of people are hesitant to even get their posting started because they're like, what do I talk about? You kind of just have to like, just get started with creating content, getting it posted on LinkedIn, finding your voice. And then the more comfortable you get with just posting on LinkedIn, then you can start to work into building the marketing campaigns, using the ads platforms. But number one is go leverage the free parts of LinkedIn, just get started posting on there. And then from there, you can start to move into advertising and other facets.
Thank you, Anthony, so much. You shed such a spotlight on the opportunities inside of LinkedIn today. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming onto the podcast and being a part of the conversation.
Thanks for having me. That was a great discussion.